Today we enjoy Princess Precious Heart. Have you ever heard of Princess Precious Heart? She was a princess who was so protected that when she went for a walk in the garden, the footman rolled out a red carpet. Princess Precious Heart lived in a palace with her father and mother, who were king and queen of a faraway land. It was a very beautiful land, but the people in the villages were poor. Dangerous storms and floods caused great misery in the land. Now the king tried to protect his daughter from everything that was unpleasant. He even had a crystal roof and building placed over the garden where the princess played so that she would not be harmed by rain or snow. In the summer it was wonderfully cool, and in the winter the garden was specially heated. And so the princess lived quite happily, for she thought that it was like this for every one. It was agreed that the princess was a very sweet girl, but her royal mother was very worried. "Dear husband," she would say, "I'm afraid this sort of life that you've created for our daughter is not good for her. How will she be able to understand her people later if she knows so little about them?" But the king would not listen. Then one year there came a terrible storm. Mighty winds raged over the land. Heavy cloudbursts washed away the ground, and a tremendous thunderstorm burst over the palace hill. It was so terrible that the king was unable to hide it from his daughter. The whole palace shook with the claps of thunder, and the blinding flashes of lightning frightened the people. Suddenly, the palace towers fell with a deafening crash right through the crystal roof of the palace garden. Princess Precious Heart could not understand what was happening, and she fled through the gates in her fright and disappeared into the storm. She heard the splashing of the rising water all around her as she stumbled on as far as she could. Finally, she reached a hillside, and feeling quite exhausted, she fell into a deep sleep. After several hours, the storm passed over and the sun shone on the sleeping princess. Her clothes were muddy and torn, and no one would ever have recognized her as the princess. Soon a kind farmer found her and felt sorry for the poor child. "Who are you, little girl, and where do you come from?" he asked. "How old are you, and who are your parents?" But the princess could not tell him. She had lost her memory through the shock of the storm, and she couldn't remember anything about herself. The farmer took the little girl home and looked after her well. His wife made her some new clothes, and they treated her as their own daughter. They called her Eureka, which means, "I have found it." And so Eureka grew up as a simple peasant girl who loved to help her mother. When Eureka was 10 years old, she could milk a cow, and when she was 14 years old, she was able to help with the haymaking in the fields. And so her new life was simple and modest. The only reminder of her past was a little medallion which Eureka had worn around her neck on the night of the disaster long ago, and the farmer's wife kept this for her. One day, when Eureka was 18 years old, she sat milking the cows when she heard a trumpet call in the distance. She jumped up and saw a big white royal coach, drawn by fine horses, come toward her along the country lane. She quickly smoothed her apron and tidied her hair, and in a few moments the royal coach had stopped right in front of her. A handsome young man jumped out of the coach and politely bowed to her. "My dear young lady," he said, "maybe you can help me. I have lost my way." And as he looked at her, he realized that she was the sweetest girl he had ever seen. He felt he must stay and talk to her, so he pretended to be very tired. I have come a long way, and I should like to rest here for a while. Will you please give me a drink of that delicious milk?" "Why, of course," said Eureka. She wasn't a bit shy at being spoken to by a gentleman from the court. "Please tell me your name and where you come from." "Just call me Richard. I come from the court of King Dagobert, a long way from here. And you, sweet girl, what is your name?"
"My name is Eureka. I am just a farmer's daughter."
"You may be only a farmer's daughter, but you speak like a princess," said the young man. "I had never met such a sweet girl in all the court." Soon the young man had to go on his way, but he promised to come back again, and he kept his promise. Eureka and he spent many happy hours together. One day he asked Eureka to be his wife, and he went to her parents to ask for Eureka's hand in marriage, and they told him the story of the night of the disaster. The farmer's wife showed him the medallion, and he recognized the crest of the nearby kingdom. "I am Prince Richard, the son of King Dagobert. Eureka must be the daughter of the king of a land that lies near ours. Her name is Princess Precious Heart." Oh, you might imagine how happy everyone was when they heard the great news. The bells rang throughout the whole land. When Princess Precious Heart saw her parents again, she suddenly remembered everything, and she threw herself into her mother's arms. When Princess Precious Heart and Prince Richard were married, there was an enormous feast in both kingdoms. The people had never been so happy. The farmer and his wife went to live at the palace. The old king was very grateful to them. He now realized that through them his daughter had become a fine princess, and all the people loved her. She was a fine princess because she understood her people, and so they lived happily ever